We're the Spaceballs. Watch out. I love that movie. I love Spaceballs so much. It's such a special movie to me. I'll just keep watching Spaceballs on Amazon Prime every night while I go to bed, which is kind of what I do.
You know, if someone wanted to give Mel Brooks $30 million, Mel Brooks would make Spaceballs 2 Revenge of Dark Helmet or whatever it's going to get.
Oh, you sold me. You sold me. I want that movie so bad.
They'd have
Get
to
Rick Moranis out of
pull
retirement.
Rick Moranis out of retirement. I don't know what that dude's doing. He's in Santa Monica somewhere, surfing, bodyboarding. I don't know. Get that dude back in the helmet.
They never got rid of Nightcrawler. Like, Nightcrawler just is kind of like that cousin nobody likes in the family. Just kind of stopped showing up. Like they never explained where he went, whatever. All we know is that he's this big, key, important part of X-Men at the end of X-Men 2. Then poof, just like his teleporter ability, he's gone.
Yeah.
Maybe he went back to seminary. Maybe he went back to finish his theological degree.
Yeah, they break him out again.
Like, I just don't know, but he just kind of disappeared.
I mean, what are we gonna do? We're gonna do like an Aunt May movie? How about a zombie Uncle Ben movie? You know, he rises from the grave.
You know, I don't think there's the J. Jonah Jameson movie.
No.
So
He just runs the newspaper the whole time.
it's all
J.
like,
Jonah on a race against time to save the paper.
only news.
To
All the
save
news.
the
like
print medium.
It's like Newsroom instead.
He's fighting the internet.
Right.
It's like Newsroom.
Right now over there, they said like they can't use their email, they can't use their computers. People aren't getting paychecks. Like
It's like Rocky. They're screaming out the
They're
window.
using those old air tubes when you sub a message in it, it goes upstairs.
But it's like, hey, I have a good Spider-Man idea. Send a Raven.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, yo, we're making Sinister Six.
And make sure that the innocent bystanders in New York are aware that there's danger happening 10 feet away from them, and they're not just like watching this fight like they got, you know, box tickets at a prize fight. Run in the other direction.
Should I watch the previous ones to understand episode 7?
Yes, you should absolutely watch all of the only 3 existing Star Wars movies. Star Wars, Empire Strikes Back, and Return of the Jedi. The other 3 don't exist. They're like a little practical joke. Any day now, George Lucas is going to put out a press release going, "Gotcha! You thought I was being serious with those prequel movies. I got you all." So yeah, go back and watch them. I mean, absolutely, yes.
Yeah, dude, I'm envious that you're 17 and you haven't watched any of these Star Wars movies. My recommendation is, yes, watch all of them. Watch 1 and 2, well, the first 2 Star Wars movies. Actually, 4 and 5, episodes 4 and 5 is what I would do. Then I would watch episodes 1, 2, 3, and then I would watch Return of the Jedi and kind of come right into episode 7. That's my
I don't know what you're talking about with episodes 1, 2, 3.
This is a very existential question to ask because do you start with the original trilogy? You got to watch all 6 movies. Sorry, John. There's 6 movies. You got to see all of them. I also recommend the 2 Ewoks movies that aired on TV in the 80s. I would say start with the original trilogy, then go to the prequels. You're going to be fine. There's at least one redeeming quality in each one of those films, and then get ready for the redemption of Star Wars with Episode 7.
Let's move on to the 4th question today. And the 4th question, pardon me, today comes from William Morris. I'm assuming that's not the same guy who runs the big talent agency.
He is a cigarette. He is literally a cigarette who writes.
Hail AMC. I guess it's a Hail Hydra reference. I love this picture of you too. Found you guys last year on your Man of Steel review and have been watching ever since. Thank you so much, William. Speaking of reviews, I heard a rumor that John, John, that's me, didn't let Schnepp do the review of Amazing Spider-Man 2 because he didn't like the film. Is this true? If so, how do you decide what films to review and who reviews them? Well, let me say this first, though. Let me say this first. And for the record, Schnepp, for that Spider-Man 2 review, Schnepp, in the review too, I mentioned in the spoilers review, I wanted to make sure Schnepp's views were reflected. So I made sure that in the review I stopped and said, "Hey guys, by the way, Schnepp, who is not on this review, Schnepp did not like this film, and he probably would have given it like a 2 out of 10." And I double checked with you, and you said, "Yeah, that would be it." For the record, Schnepp contacted me.
Yeah, I called him and said, "Hey, I'm not gonna," because I was gonna be on the spoiler show. I went and saw it Thursday, and I was like, "Dude, I can't be on the spoiler show because I absolutely hated it. I'm furious and angry." And even talking about it, even now,
you start to get worked up.
I get angry.
I see your face getting red.
Yeah, because I feel a disappointment that I don't want to express it because I could go on for like 4 hours. So it's like
I tried to talk him into it.
Yeah.
I said, I said, Schnepp, it's okay if you didn't like it. It's great. We'll talk about the positives, we'll talk about the negatives, and we'll just rationally say, and then we'll give our score. Nothing wrong with that. But he was like, I cannot be rational talking about this movie.
Yeah, and I also felt like because I really didn't like it, that it's like, I think in spoilers, you're giving the positive and the negative. and I didn't have any positive stuff to say about it. Even in the scenes that I thought were fun or worked, I like those scenes even less.
Right.
Because it was like, that's what the movie should have been, and it's surrounded by all this other stuff.
You did see a lot of positives in this film, because we have the same list of positives and negatives,
Right.
but it was just that the negatives were so strong for you. To you, it kind of, even though you agreed that certain things were good things about the film, they were just completely wiped out and overshadowed by the negatives.
It just took it down to like a 2. Like you said, I was like maybe 1, maybe 2, but because it was so disappointing. You could see the movie that it wanted to be, struggling, and all this other stuff on top of it, and really bad decisions, and we can go into the whole Spider-Man review, but yeah, suffice to say, I pulled myself out of doing the review because I felt my tone itself would have been too negative, and I couldn't even, like, I'm not gonna lie. That's my thing. I'm not going to put on a fake face and be like, because John was like, well, you could mention things that are positive about it. I was like, I don't feel that way right now. I don't know if like in 2 weeks I'll feel that way.
Right.
Like, please write some fan fiction about it. I would like to be a MODOK creature floating above Campea. I have finally destroyed you, Campea. Or waste your time making weird videos about how I'm being controlled by the super Campeas or whatever. I don't, seriously, guys. I watched a few of these things and I was like, wow, that's putting a lot of extra effort into something that really is not, it's vapor. So
yeah, well, whatever.
Yeah,
it's a long time ago. There's some very stupid people in the world, and you just got to be able to grin at it and move on. I still haven't watched those videos, but I mean, you came in the other day and told me about one of them. I'm just
and it was a little weird. I was like,
I'm amazed we're big enough that there are actually some people out there who want to make hate videos.
Yeah, it's weird
about us. It's amazing that we're that big.
Yeah, it's astonishing. So
sitting to Jimmy's right, he is the director of the very popular animated series Metalocalypse. He is Mr. John Schnepp. John, how you doing?
Hey, what's going on, John?
Thank you so much for being here. So that'll wrap it up for the news feed. Now let's get to the real topic at hand here. Marvel caused a bit of confusion, stun, bewilderment when they announced that Guardians of the Galaxy was going to be in what they're calling Phase 2 of the Marvel movie universe. We've got, if I'm correct me if I'm wrong here, we've got upcoming Iron Man 3, Captain America Winter Soldier, Thor the Dark World, which will then be followed by Guardians of the Galaxy leading directly into the Avengers. Most people don't know much about Guardians of the Galaxy, myself included, which is why I'm not kidding. I got on my Nexus 7, got on my comics app, and downloaded all of them and read just as much as I could. So John, let's start with you. Let's start very general here. Who are the Guardians of the Galaxy?
Well, I think a better question is like, what is Marvel's outer space epic? And I think it really actually began in the 60s with the Fantastic Four going into the negative zone and traveling all around into the microverse. And so they started doing these like epic space journeys. And so I look at Guardians of the Galaxy, especially the movie version, as Marvel's Star Wars. If you look at it like that, I mean, basically you have like the X-Men, you have the Shi'ar, you have Starjammers, you have the Kree, you have Ronan the Accuser, you have all these crazy, weird, freaky characters from the Fantastic Four. Yeah, every single version, like the Avengers, they had Korvac, they had Thor, had the High Evolutionary who changed men into weird mutant animals. I mean, there's all these like interconnected stories that started out really like an example is one of the characters from the Guardians of the Galaxy, which I don't know if they're going to use in the movie version, is Adam Warlock. He started out in Fantastic Four as like this bizarre, weird, like orange dude that humans created as like some kind of experiment to make the super Ultraman. And this was an early Jack Kirby Fantastic Four, Stan Lee Fantastic Four. They beat him. He was like, yo, I'm out of here. He went to outer space. Cut to 10 years later, so like Jim Starlin, I think, was like, hey, I'm going to remember that weird orange dude? I'm going to put a gem in his head. He's Warlock. High Evolutionary was like, let me rebuild you, bam. Now he's got some soul gem.
Now, wasn't one of the gems that ultimately ends up in the Infinity Gauntlet?
Yeah, totally. The Infinity Gauntlet, it's funny because it's like a lot of characters from the 70s all had gems in their head. And that was like some kind of weird hippie thing. I don't know how to really describe. People are like, I got to come up with some kind of weird, like psycho-dimensional character. Let's put some kind of power gem in their head, and their brain emulates power stuff. Signals, lasers come out of the head. You know, and seriously, like that's another character from Guardians of the Galaxy, the guy who became Star-Lord. And a lot of these characters, the origin is almost the same. It's like, I'm some dude driving in a truck. Yo, an alien spaceship shows up and messes my world up. I get transport 1,000 years into the future. I have a gem in my head. Bam!
described my last trip to Vegas.
I could fly around. Or like for Guardians of the Galaxy, the very first Guardians, it was like this guy was like, I'm gonna be the first dude to travel for like 1,000 years. He wakes up and he's like, he got strange. It was Gene Colan drew him, so he's like bizarre, weird, purple body with a mesh skin face. And so most of the characters in that very first Guardians of the Galaxy, like translated, 10, 15 years later, they just redrew them all. Like Gene Colan drew I think it was the guy from, I want to say it was the guy from Jupiter, because Jupiter's mass is so big. He drew him like this giant, almost juggernaut looking like squat dude, because over the millions of years, their bodies adapted into this squat, kind of strange, like slab-like form. So he was like a giant fat dude, and they're like, yeah, that look is not happening. And you know what I'm saying? Like in I think it was like 1971 or whatever. The first one, I don't know the exact years off the top of my head, but like the first one, all four of those dudes were walking, on the cover, and it's like you got Crystal Dude, you got like blue weird guy with a strange living fin, you got giant squat fat man, and then you have our character who's now like Star-Lord. He was just like a purple weird. He looked almost like Parasite from Superman. If you remember that purple guy, is just like a weird face and just like all purple. That was him. And I don't think they even just mentioned why he had a weird purple mask like on his face.
Star-Lord looks like somebody right out of The Watchmen now.
Now he does.
Star-Lord, I think he looks like somebody right out of The
I actually
Watchmen.
like the new. It was kind of weird because growing up in the late 70s, early 80s, I knew the Star-Lord that was kind of like the first like sci-fi take on a character in the Marvel universe, where they were like, yo, it's not really connected to any of the other characters, and he's like in a spaceship and he's got these weird goggles, and I was really into Star Wars at the time, so I was like, oh, it's another spaceship comic book, so that was kind of, and John Byrne was drawing it, Chris Claremont was writing it, and that was like right before the X-Men, so I was really into all those characters.
Let's fast forward now. When I picked up, like I said, I hadn't read Guardians of the Galaxy before last week, and I picked them up, and it where I started reading it from was a very different team than the ones from the 60s and 70s.
Yeah.
It was now Star-Lord, whose name is Peter
Quill.
Peter Quill, thank you. And the galaxy had just gone through a number of wars and huge battles that left the fabric of space and time very fragile.
Do you mean the galaxy just went through several Star Wars?
Bing. And Peter Star-Lord decides he needs to assemble a team that's going to defend. Now, in this incarnation of the team, which I think is going to be more reflective of what we're going to see in the movie, you had Peter Quill, Star-Lord. You had Gamora. You had Drax the Destroyer. You had Adam Warlock. You had, now this is where we start to stretch it a bit. You had Cosmo the space telekinetic dog. I can't make this stuff up. It's a dog in a CCCP Russian space outfit who was sent into space by the Soviet Union, developed telekinetic and telepathic powers, and is now the security chief of the home base of the Guardians of the Galaxy.
What do you mean? It makes total sense.
Yeah, it happens
and he
all
thinks,
the time.
He speaks telepathically, and he thinks in a Russian accent. Every other word ends with ink. And then the most head scratcher of them all is this character named, now hold on to your seats here, named Rocket Raccoon. Now, Ryan, you got a graphic there of the Guardians of the Galaxy, so you can bring it up. Now, Marvel put out a concept piece of art, and for the Guardians of the Galaxy movie. Now, in it we see Groot, who I haven't mentioned yet, who is basically he's an Ent from Lord of the Rings. He's an Ent.
He's an Ent.
And he only ever says, "I am Groot." At least in the comics that I had read.
He's from the actual original Tales to Astonish. He was like one of those monsters, like, I am Grorb, the sand monster. Then the next issue, I am Groot, I'm a tree dude. Then the next issue, I am Skimball, the octopus thing. Because they had to come up with like a different creature every issue, and that's where his origins are. He was like, I was some dude from Tales to Astonish. Now I'm in this movie.
now I'm in Guardians of the Galaxy.
Yeah.